Rain tapped gently on the rusted tin roof of a quiet, time-worn farmhouse nestled deep in Georgia's countryside. The fields stretched far and wide, once bustling with the movement of crops and cattle, now lay still under the gray morning sky. The old wooden porch creaked as Miss Thelma Davis stepped out, wrapped in a thick knitted shawl. Her dark hands, weathered by decades of hard work and harsh summers, clutched a chipped teacup. She moved slowly, deliberately, not from weakness, but from a calm strength, the kind that only came from surviving too much and saying too little. Miss Thelma was 78 years old, a widow, and lived alone. To most folks around the county, she was just a quiet, stubborn elder who kept to herself and never missed Sunday church. The neighbors called her Mama Thelma, not out of affection, but tradition, because she had always been there. Always watching, always strong. But what no one really knew, what no one ever guessed, was that Miss Thelma had a past few dared ask about. And those who did quickly learned not to press. She had no family left around. Her only son died years ago, serving overseas. Her grandbabies lived in the city and visited once a year maybe. Still, she tended to the land, fed the chickens, repaired the broken fence posts. She lived slow, steady, and on her own terms, but trouble was coming, not the kind you could patch up with duct tape and prayer. That morning, a beat-up black SUV rolled past the gravel road, its engine growling like a hungry animal. Inside were 5 men, young, brash, and bored, strangers to this land and worse, strangers to respect. They had been scoping out properties for weeks, targeting vulnerable spots, isolated homes, elderly residents, places where folks wouldn't, or couldn't, fight back. And to them, Thelma's farm looked like easy picking. "Old lady lives alone," the one in the passenger seat muttered, chewing on a toothpick. "Ain't got no dogs, no security cameras, not even a neighbor in shouting distance. Piece of cake." Their leader, a stocky man with tattoos curling up his neck, just nodded. He didn't care who she was. He only cared about what might be. Stashed in that house, guns, jewelry, maybe some cash. Even if she didn't have much, they'd make a statement. They called it a lesson, a warning to others in the area not to resist them. What they didn't know, what none of them could have possibly imagined, was that Miss Thelma wasn't just an old woman sitting on a porch sipping tea. She was a legend. Decades ago, long before, arthritis crept into her joints and her hair turned silver, Thelma Davis had worn a different name on her uniform, a different face, one that held the cold focus of a trained sniper. She had served in the military back when black women were barely acknowledged, much less respected. But she didn't serve for recognition. She served because she was good. Too good to be ignored. And when war called, she answered, silently, with deadly precision. Her file had long been sealed, forgotten by time and dust. But her memories weren't, and her rifles, still clean, still sharp, still ready. That afternoon, while those men laughed in their car, circling back for their lesson, Miss Thelma sat at her kitchen table staring at the corner of her cupboard. Inside, behind a false panel, lay a weapon she hadn't touched in nearly 15 years. But something in her chest stirred. A quiet alarm. That old sense, like the one she used to get moments before a firefight. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Miles away in a crowded city bus, another story was unfolding. A teenage boy, no older than 17, stood quietly, swaying with the movement of the ride. His name was Jamal, a tall, polite kid with a shy smile and deep brown eyes, dressed in a faded hoodie and cargo jeans. He had dreams, big ones, but kept them to himself. His family didn't have much, and every day felt like a climb. But he was raised with one simple rule: always respect others. That's why, when a visibly pregnant white woman stepped onto the bus looking around for a seat, with exhausted eyes, Jamal didn't hesitate. He stood up. "Ma'am, you can take my seat," he said softly, stepping aside. The woman looked startled at first, then grateful. She smiled, eased down with effort, and nodded. "Thank you, young man. That's very kind of you." Jamal just shrugged and leaned against the wall, earbuds back in, lost in his own world. When she stood up to leave a few stops later, she reached into her purse, pulled out a folded envelope, and pressed it into Jamal's hand. He blinked, What's this? Open it when you get home, she said. And, thank you again. You don't know how much this means. And just like that, she was gone. Jamal turned the envelope over in his hands the whole ride home. No name. Just a single word written in neat cursive. Trust. Back in Georgia, the clouds were beginning to split open. The gang had parked down the road. They moved through the tall grass quietly, wearing black hoodies and gloves, confident and cocky. One of them chuckled under his breath. Hope Granny baked us some cookies. The front gate creaked open. No lights in the house. No dogs. No sound. Spread out, their leader ordered. But in the shadows of the barn, the sharp click of a scope echoed faintly as a barrel slid through a cracked window. Miss Thelma's breath was steady. Her eyes locked in. Not on the closest one, but the leader. Always take out the head first, she whispered to herself, calm and quiet like a prayer. I didn't survive all this time just to go out like some victim. She exhaled. The crosshairs narrowed. Back in Jamal's small bedroom, he finally peeled open the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on crisp paper, and a number. His eyes widened. Then he read the words again, slower. You stood up when you didn't have to. Call this number. It could change your life. He didn't know what it meant, not yet, but a storm was brewing. Not just on Miss Thelma's farm, but in his own life too. And both of them were about to collide, because fate has a funny way of tying strangers together, through kindness, through violence, through destiny. And as the first shot rang out across the fields, cutting the silence in half, the gang realized, too late, that the old woman wasn't their victim. She was their reckoning, and Jamal, he was already walking towards something far bigger than he ever imagined. But none of them knew what came next. Not yet. The sound of that first shot was like a thunderclap, sharp, clean, and chilling. It echoed across the fields and into the woods, scattering birds into the gray sky. One of the gang members, Jason, dropped instantly. His body slumped near the rusted garden fence. The others froze. Confusion flashed across their faces. Then fear. This wasn't supposed to happen. They thought they were the predators. But now, they realized, they were being hunted. Tyrone, the leader, crouched behind a rain barrel, breathing hard. What the? He whispered, heart racing. He glanced over at his cousin Rico, who was crawling behind the tractor tires. Rico's voice shook. Was that a shot? No, Tyrone muttered. That was a damn warning. But Thelma didn't do warnings. She hadn't picked up that rifle in over a decade, but her fingers remembered every groove. It was old, but clean, maintained like sacred scripture. She hadn't needed it in years. But some instincts never fade. She had spotted them the moment they stepped foot near her land. City boys, sloppy, loud, full of bravado but no discipline, no idea where they were or who they were messing with. She watched through the scope, calm and unblinking. She didn't feel fear. She didn't even feel anger. Just a cold, quiet resolve. Her farm was all she had left. It was her sanctuary, her battlefield, and she would defend it. Inside her home, the walls were lined with old family photos. A folded American flag sat above the fireplace. Her son's medals hung next to her own, dusty but dignified. Few people ever asked about them. Fewer still understood. She kept one eye on the yard and the other on the barn camera, an old system her late husband had set up back when folks used to steal chickens. It still worked. Barely. But enough. Outside, the gang regrouped behind her shed. Tension buzzed in the air like electricity. What the hell is this, man? Marcus hissed. She's a freaking sniper or something? Tyrone didn't answer. He was staring toward the porch, eyes narrowed. Nah, she's just an old woman, he said, mostly to himself. She got lucky, but he didn't believe. That? Not really. He reached into his hoodie and pulled out a small walkie-talkie. Yo, call the rest, we need backup. We get in, we take her stuff, and we're out. Fast. Rico hesitated. I don't know, man. Jason, he ain't moving. I think he's gone. Tyrone clenched his jaw. Then we handle it. We came too far to back down. Inside the house, Thelma moved slowly from window to window, watching, waiting, listening, her breathing steady, her steps soft. She had seen things in war, things these boys couldn't even imagine. She remembered one mission in particular. Bosnia. Cold winds, sharp terrain. She had sat for hours, motionless, waiting for one clear shot, one shot that saved dozens of lives. They never thanked her, never celebrated her, but she didn't care. Her job was never about medals. It was about doing what had to be done. Back in the city, Jamal sat on the edge of his bed, still holding that envelope. The number on the note burned in his brain. He'd thought about ignoring it. Maybe it was a scam. Maybe just a kind gesture and nothing more. But something inside him nudged him to dial, not just curiosity, something deeper. A pull he couldn't explain. He picked up his phone and called. 2 rings, then a click. Hello? A woman's voice answered, professional but warm. Yeah, I got this number in an envelope from a lady on the bus. She said to call. What's your name, young man? Jamal. There was a pause. Hold, please. The line clicked again, then silence. Jamal's heart thumped. He was about to hang up when another voice came on the line. This one was different, measured, confident. Jamal, this is Director Holloway. I understand you were kind to a woman on the bus today. Yeah, he said slowly, unsure where this was going. I mean, she looked tired. I just gave her my seat. There was another pause. Sometimes, Holloway said, the smallest acts reveal the strongest character. Then something unexpected. We'd like to meet you, in person. I'll send a car tomorrow. Would your parents be home? Jamal sat straighter. Wait, who are you? I mean, is this like a job thing, or? You'll understand soon, the voice said gently. Trust is everything, and you've already shown you deserve it. Then the call ended. Jamal stared at the phone in disbelief. Meanwhile, back at the farm, the gang had split up. Rico and Marcus circled toward the back, while Tyrone and another Deshawn crept closer to the front. Thelma tracked every movement. She didn't want to kill anyone, not if she didn't have to, but she would not let fear walk through her front door. She pulled a walkie from the drawer, an old army model, battered but still working, and clicked it to channel 1. You boys picked the wrong house, she said, her voice clear and cold. Through the static, the gang stopped dead. Tyrone's eyes darted around. What the hell? You got 1 minute to walk away, she continued. 1 minute before I stop warning shots. You think this is funny? Deshawn shouted, trying to puff his chest up. You ain't gonna do nothing. We ain't. Scared of no grandma with a toy gun. Another pause, then a second shot. This one missed, but barely. It hit the post an inch from Deshawn's head, splintering wood and sending him scrambling behind the well. She wasn't aiming to kill. Not yet. But her message was clear. Inside the house, Thelma whispered, You think I survived Bosnia and Beirut just to fall to some street punks in muddy sneakers? The storm clouds above rumbled louder now, thunder in the distance. The wind picked up, and as the air grew thick with tension, a car, long and black, pulled up outside Jamal's apartment building the next morning. He stood by the window watching, unsure, nervous but ready. He had no idea that the woman he helped was no ordinary woman, and neither was the one standing alone, defending her land. 2 different stories, 2 different paths. But somehow, deeply connected, and none of them, not Thelma, not Jamal, not Tyrone or his crew, knew that what was happening on that farm was only the beginning. Rain had started to fall by mid-afternoon, soft at first, then harder, tapping against the tin roof like a warning drum. The wind rattled the shutters of Thelma's house while inside. She sat cross-legged near the window, breathing slow and steady. Her fingers never left the rifle. Outside, the gang had gone quiet, but she knew they were still there. She could feel it, like a storm holding its breath. Tyrone crouched behind an overturned wheelbarrow, soaked to the bone. His hoodie stuck to his skin, and his nerves were beginning to fray. We ain't built for this, Rico muttered, teeth chattering as he wiped mud from his jeans. I thought she'd be easy. Just grab the stuff and bounce. Tyrone didn't answer. He was thinking about the stories, the rumors, about some old woman way out here who kept to herself, who didn't go to town often but who used to be someone. A soldier, maybe. Some even said a government assassin, but most people laughed it off, called it nonsense. Now, though, Tyrone wasn't laughing. We got backup coming, he said finally. They'll bring more heat. She can't hold us off forever. But something inside him wasn't sure, because so far she wasn't scared. And that's what scared him. Most miles away, in a quiet government facility just outside the city, a woman in a gray blazer paced across a secure room. Director Holloway stood in front of a screen showing live satellite feeds. Nothing classified, just weather and mapping, data. But on her desk sat a file marked with Thelma Johnson's name. A younger agent stepped forward. Ma'am, we tracked the boy, Jamal Thomas. He's clean, no records, no affiliations. Top of his class, raised by his grandmother. Holloway nodded. He has good instincts, that's what matters. The agent hesitated. Why the sudden interest in a random act of kindness? Holloway closed the file slowly. It wasn't random. She didn't give him that note by accident. The agent looked confused. You think there's a connection between Thelma Johnson and the woman on the bus? I don't think, Holloway replied. I know. She walked over to a cabinet and retrieved an older file, yellowed with time. The top sheet was a photo, a younger Thelma, in uniform, eyes sharp, shoulders squared. Beside her was another woman, same calm expression, same fire in her gaze. The woman on the bus. Two ghosts from a different war, Holloway murmured. And now they've both resurfaced. Back on the farm, the tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Thelma had managed to isolate the gang, forcing them into a standstill. But she knew it wouldn't last. The real danger wasn't the four. Out there. It was who they might call next. She walked over to the corner and pulled up a loose floorboard. Beneath it was a locked box. She opened it carefully. Inside were letters, photos, and a smaller handgun. Lightweight, easy to handle. She tucked it into her waistband. Then, with steady hands, she pulled out a folded map. Marked in red ink were spots all around the property. Escape routes, hiding places, defense zones. She hadn't needed this in years. But her instincts whispered, tonight might be different. Meanwhile, Rico was getting twitchy. He kept glancing toward the woods where shadows moved with the wind. Yo, I'm telling you, we need to go, he whispered to Tyrone. This ain't worth it. We ain't even got nothing yet. Tyrone snapped. We came here for the stash. Think I'm leaving empty-handed? But what if she ain't just defending junk? Rico asked. What if this whole place is a setup? You ever think of that? Just then, the backup arrived. Two more guys, both older, more experienced. One of them, Kev, was ex-military himself. He didn't say much, just scanned the area and frowned. Who are we dealing with? Kev asked. Tyrone pointed toward the house. Some old lady with a rifle, that's it. Kev's eyes narrowed. That ain't just some rifle, judging by what you told me. Clean shots, no panic. Whoever's in that house has training. Serious training. Man, she's like 80, Deshaun scoffed. Kev shook his head slowly. And yet here y'all are, wet, cold, and scared. For the first time, Tyrone looked genuinely uncertain. Across town, Jamal sat at a long table, across from Director Holloway. His grandmother sat beside him, quiet but watchful. The room was warm, but Jamal's palms were cold. Why am I here? He asked finally. Holloway leaned forward. Because you showed something we don't see, often anymore. Courage, compassion. And you did it without expecting anything in return. I just gave her my seat, he said again quietly. Holloway smiled, but her eyes stayed serious. Yes. And because of that, someone who has watched over this country in silence for decades decided you were worth knowing. She slid a folder. Across the table, Jamal opened it slowly. His eyes widened. Inside were photos, military photos, of Thelma, of missions, SEALs, badges. "She's not just some old woman on a farm," Holloway said. "She's one of the most skilled snipers this country has ever produced. Retired, yes, but not forgotten." Jamal's mind reeled. Why? Why would she be out there all alone? "Because people like her don't chase headlines," Holloway said. "They just want peace after everything they've seen. But sometimes peace doesn't last." Back on the farm, Thelma stepped outside onto the porch, rifle slung behind her shoulder, the smaller handgun at her hip. Rain soaked her hair, but she didn't flinch. She called out loud enough for all of them to hear. "You boys think you're wolves," she said, "but you've wandered into a lion's den." The words hung in the air, heavy. Then she turned and walked back inside. Kev exhaled slowly. "We ain't taking this place easy. We're gonna need more than firepower." "What do you mean?" Tyrone asked. Kev glanced back at the trees. "I mean, we either leave now or we risk losing more than just our pride." But Tyrone's pride was already bruised, and for him, retreat would feel like defeat. He pulled out his phone and made another call. This one wasn't to a friend. It was to someone far worse. Thelma, watching from her window, saw the change. In movement. They weren't leaving. They were digging in, preparing. She sighed, then reached for the landline. It had been years since she used the number written in faded ink taped under the receiver. She dialed it now. 3 rings. Then a voice answered, calm, female, familiar. "You always call at the worst times, Thelma." Thelma cracked the smallest smile. "Yeah, well, I might need a little help. Got company, young and stupid." The voice on the other end paused. "How many?" "Too many," Thelma said. "And I think more are coming." There was a long breath. "All right, I'll be there by dawn." The line went dead. Thelma looked back out the window, eyes steady. Tonight wasn't over. Not even close.